Good morning. Welcome to your Sunday morning, early morning intuitive guidance. I'm Dr. Bonnie Nussbaum, America's kick-ass coach and psychologist. Here are some words of wisdom to get us moving forward on our efforts to reclaim conversation and communication in ways that make things clearer and more effective. I'm smiling because I've got my SAD light on, seasonal affective disorder light, and I can see the bank of lights in my glasses. So it probably makes me look kind of sparkly. So I conceived of a title for this one based on the three little sections that I'm going to read. So you aren't going to find that specific heading in the book. But for those of you who have the book and want to read along, it's page 95. And it begins, the three sections we're going to read are establishing separateness, asking for clarification, and holding others accountable. And I'm really excited about the examples she uses in the book today. So anyway, the book is Taking the War Out of Our Words, The Art of Powerful Non-Defensive Communication by Sharon Ellison. And I'm really excited about the examples she uses because they are so everyday. They should chime for most of us, I think, in one way or another. So, starting with establishing separateness. Remember yesterday and the day before, we had talked about Sharon going to get new tires for her car and George the mechanic basically telling her she didn't need to know anything about the tires she was getting, and her feeling very angry and put off that she felt he was judging her as a woman, that she wouldn't understand it and why bother talking about it anyway. When she got her emotions under control and she asked him, do you think I don't need to know about these tires I'm buying? As neutrally as she could, he kind of looked blank and gave her the reply, well, no, that wasn't it. He had taught classes of mechanics this stuff and often had mechanics question him, not believe him, etc., etc. And so he was feeling like she was putting him down in that same way. So again, a total miscommunication. Good morning, good morning. Glad you guys are here. Nobody's name is popping up, but I'm going to guess Cindy's one of the two. Yep. Good. Glad you're here. Glad you're here. And to whomever else is here, welcome, welcome. So that's the backstory that's leading into her comment right here. So page 95, establishing separateness. When I reacted angrily to George's negation of my request for information about the tires I was buying, I was defending against his right to dictate what I did or didn't need to know. I was like a child rebelling against a parent's authority, and in the process, I gave him power over me. A non-defensive question helps to establish the subjectivity of each person's point of view. You believe this, I believe that. And thus can assist us in remaining separate from someone else's judgment, even if the person's answer doesn't please us. Good morning, Judy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So again, they may not change their tune at all when we ask our question, but we're going to see that it holds them accountable and it helps shift the dynamic of the conversation such that we feel empowered, which is pretty much what we're aiming for here. Instead of continuing to react as if George had the authority to decide what I did or didn't need to know about the tires, I asked him directly for his personal opinion about my desire for information. My question made it clear that his comment was his own subjective opinion. Good morning, Lisa. Welcome, welcome. And welcome to someone else. I think someone may have slipped past me here, but welcome. Glad you're all here because we got good stuff today. I was no longer bound by or struggling against his viewpoint. Then I could express my own opinions and needs more confidently. When anyone states opinion as fact, as George did, you don't need to know, stating it as if it's a fact, when really it's his opinion, the person is applying a personal opinion generally to another person or group without their consent. Good morning, Diane. Welcome, welcome. It's you. Yay! So glad you're here. We had such a fun day yesterday. We went shopping Went for a nice long drive. It was like 70 minutes out and 70 minutes back, but we just chatted the whole way and bought 5-pound bags of bacon at Newski's. And then when I got mine home, I just broke it up into chunks, and so now we'll have really good bacon. I'm so excited. We had fun. And then we went to lunch and ate and ate and ate. It was fabulous. It was Mexican food. We even ended with fried ice cream. Be still my heart. And I didn't eat supper because I was still stuffed. That was fun. So let's go back to that last question because I pontificated about food and fun. When someone states opinion as fact, as George did, the person is applying a personal opinion generally to another person or group without their consent. Okay? Anytime that happens, we can genuinely ask, and again, those of you who are making a 3x5 card of the words that you can use in certain situations or writing it in a notebook or whatever, here's one of those statements to put down. Are you stating that as your own opinion, or are you stating that as a fact? Are you stating that as your own opinion, or are you stating that as a fact? This question asks the person to stop and think. Much of the time, he or she will shift and acknowledge the statement as a personal opinion and accept that we may have a different one. Even if the person still claims the opinion as fact, we can now express a different viewpoint without feeling defensive. The process of establishing this separateness can be freeing. So here's another example of that. And this is Maggie and Claudia. Maggie is a social worker. Claudia is her supervisor. Claudia thinks that Maggie gets too emotionally involved with her clients. So that's the backstory. The process of establishing this separateness can be freeing. Maggie decided to see if she could avoid being caught up in the judgments of Claudia, her social work supervisor. When one of her clients lost his welfare money due to a technicality, she became concerned. Claudia, remaining true to form, criticized her for being too emotional. Good morning, Joe. Good morning. This time, rather than trying to defend herself against Claudia's judgment, Maggie simply asked, here's another one of those questions that you can write down and maybe tweak for your own purposes. Do you feel emotion when you know someone is going to become destitute? So I tend to be a teary person. Stupid stuff. The bus drivers all testing their lights in the morning. I tear up. Hearing the national anthem, I tear up. Watching someone walk with their little kid who's toddling along, I tear up. I'm just one of those people. So there might be times when I do need to say to somebody, do you feel emotion when you see something like this? Okay? Claudia paused and frowned, then sighed as she answered, well, I do, but it doesn't do any good. There's her thought process. It doesn't do any good. Her tone changed completely, sounding almost defeated. After one question, Claudia had moved from accusing Maggie of being too emotional to expressing her own emotions. If, on the other hand, Claudia had responded by saying, no, I don't feel emotion for clients. My job as a professional is to remain objective, Maggie would then have been free to respond with her opinion without coming across as defensive. Maggie successfully separated herself from Claudia's judgment by shifting her focus from self-defense to information gathering. So she asked the question to gather the information. Upon describing the experience, she reflected that she had never before felt so free of Claudia's judgments. A sincere question often has the effect of equalizing a conversation, even in cases where there's a power differential. Again, she's talking to her supervisor. There's a power differential. It enables us to separate ourselves from someone else's judgments so that we can walk away with our confidence and self-esteem intact, no matter how the other person responds. By asking the question she did, Maggie was able to move from feeling defensive to feeling confidence in her own level of compassion. Because we are human beings and we do react to things somewhat differently, and it's okay. It's okay. So she's claiming who she is right there. She's more emotional. She gets upset when people don't get the things they need, etc. Just is. So here's the next little section called Asking for Clarification. And this one I think is huge. Like I've said, marital couples are notorious for assuming they know what their spouse means by something without seeking this clarification. So as we're reading through these, see if you can think of any situations in your life where this has happened. It can happen with a sibling because you've spent so much of your life with that sibling, you assume you know what they mean by something. Many of us frequently phrase things in such a way that we don't say what we mean. Let's take the example of a friend or family member who says, "You haven't called for so long that I thought you didn't care anymore." Could you see anyone in your family or among your friend group saying that to you? We might react intensely to this implication if we have supported this person over the years. Rather than just going with our initial reaction, we can first ask, here's another one of those things you can write down, do you believe that if I haven't called you recently, it means that I don't care about you? Do you believe that if I haven't called you recently, it means that I don't care about you? They might say yes or no. It doesn't matter what they say. You're setting up a conversation here. Good morning, Carolyn. Welcome, welcome. Here, we ask our friend to confirm, deny, or qualify the statement. The immediate reply may be, well, I do know you care. I was just missing you a lot and wishing you would call. This clarification causes a huge shift to occur. One moment we were talking about a friend who thought we didn't care. Now we are talking to one who has been missing us. Whole different ball of wax, right? We have moved from blame and alienation to caring and connection in a few seconds. Sometimes one question can clarify and resolve a serious misunderstanding that might have gone completely unnoticed for years. This story, I've shared it a couple times on here, but it blew me away when I read it. It was like, yeah, I remember that from childhood. And I remember my kids making these kinds of assumptions with me not being aware at all that that's where they went in their minds. Okay, so Molly told me a story about a conversation she had with her 4-year-old daughter who was attending preschool in the country. She usually encouraged Allison to wear pants to school, while her husband Stan, to her surprise and frustration, encouraged the child to wear a dress, sometimes even a long skirt. When they argued over it, Molly would say, Allison plays on a jungle gym and sometimes rides a horse at preschool. How do you expect her to be active like that in a long skirt? Her question was designed to convince him to agree, but never produced an answer that satisfied her. In the car on the way to school one day, Allison frowned and said, "You always want me to wear pants, and Daddy wants me to wear a skirt." Instead of following her urge to defend her reasons, ding, 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 Molly asked Allison, "Why do you think Daddy wants you to wear a skirt and I want you to wear pants?" Allison's answer, "He wants me to be a girl and you want me to be a boy," left Molly speechless. Kids are very concrete in their thinking, very concrete. They think very differently than adults do. And so it makes total sense that this kind of miscommunication can occur. She was delighted at having a daughter and had simply thought Allison would have more freedom of movement in jeans. She proceeded to talk to Allison about her difference in opinion with Stan in a way that satisfied Allison that her mother was glad she was a girl. Molly said, "Thank God I asked her that question. She might have ended up spending a fortune on therapy someday because of the vague feeling that I wanted her to be a boy." On the morning of the second day of the workshop, Tony announced she had a story for us. After learning about non-defensive questions, she had gone right home and called her partner, Geraldo, who was living in New York. They had talked about his moving to Illinois, where she resided, because his job skills were more portable than hers. Not wanting him to feel pressured to move, she had told him during a recent call, "You don't have to move out here if you don't want to." He met her comment with dead silence, changed the subject, and seemed withdrawn for the rest of the conversation. She didn't ask anything more because she assumed from his reaction that he really didn't want to move. Ever since that conversation, she had been struggling with her own sadness. After the first session of the workshop, Tony decided to ask Geraldo to clarify his reaction. He explained, "When my first wife got a job in another city, she told me, 'You don't have to move if you don't want to.' Shortly afterwards, she asked me for a divorce." Tony burst out laughing from relief as she told us this story. Had she not asked that single clarifying question, Tony might have backed off and not talked about plans for the move as much. Geraldo might have subsequently confirmed in his mind that she didn't want him to come and backed off as well. The assumptions each made could have led them to becoming increasingly strained and distant from each other, resulting in a self-fulfilling prophecy that manifested both of their fears. That last part, that self-fulfilling prophecy that manifests both of their fears, that happens all the time in relationships, all the time. So one that I had was a belief that people don't show up for me. If I'm moving forward with a project, whatever, if I'm needing help with something, people don't show up for me. What did I do then? I didn't ask people for help. Therefore, people didn't show up for me. It's that simple. It's that simple, but it's so emotionally fraught that oftentimes we can't even put it into words. So taking some of these sentence stems is really important. So can I get some clarification on, I sensed some disconnect between you and I after I had said that you didn't have to move here. Can I get some clarification on that? Can you help me understand where you were coming from with that? Hopefully that person can put out there, well, yeah, that happened with my first wife and then she dumped my ass. See what you can do in terms of getting the clarification, all right? Because we want to break the pattern of creating these self-fulfilling prophecies where we fear something, so we start looking for it, so we pretend to see it, we start reacting to it even if it isn't there, and we create it. It's quite the pattern. Here's the last section, holding others accountable. And there is a difference between holding someone accountable and blaming someone. So let's see what we can get out of this, okay? Holding others accountable. We can directly ask a person to address issues regarding individual responsibility and motivation. So Gordon and Selma were talked about previously also. Basic gist of it was they were supposed to be working on a project together, and Selma was kind of not doing her part, and Gordon was resentful that he was having to pick up the slack. Okay, so that's the backstory. After Gordon realized that he was taking on too much of Selma's share of the workload and his exhaustion was causing problems at home, he decided to talk to her. The next time they met, he asked, and again, here's that neutral thing that's so important. Do you believe I am doing more than my share of the projects we're working on? Perfect timing. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Yes. Do you believe I am doing more than my share on the projects we have worked on? As neutral as possible, okay? Selma took a deep breath and replied, yes, and I've been feeling very guilty about it. Gordon said his eyes almost popped out. He fully expected her to retort, no, what is your problem? Because of the irritation she had shown whenever he talked to her about project tasks, he did not believe that she would admit or even care that he was doing more work. Having asked a direct question in a non-threatening way, she took more responsibility for her behavior. So I'm sure he had to practice coming across as curious, neutral, etc. But he did it and is getting a whole lot of bang for his buck here, right? In asking her to address this issue directly, Gordon also demonstrated more willingness to hold her accountable for not sharing the workload evenly. If Gordon's question had been intended to get Selma to admit that he was doing more work than she was, it would have been entrapping. So that's a piece I think we all got to watch out for, because it's really easy to ask the baited question. Loaded for bear, ready for them to step in the trap. It needs to be that neutral, curious. Do they see it this way? Do they see it this way or not? If she had said, nope, I think we're doing an equal amount, then again, it levels the playing field, opens the door for him to say, that's not how I perceive it. Can I describe for you how I'm seeing it? And go from there. Again, staying neutral, not being invested in how she reacts, just staying neutral. Again, takes practice. Instead, the sincerity of his question drew out Selma's honest answer. I find that most people are much more careful about answering a respectful question that leaves them accountable for their response. Sally had begun to work on her own defensiveness, and one day when Marcus seemed upset, she asked him very gently, "Are you going to refuse to talk to me if I ask you what is wrong?" Sally reported that Marcus sat stone silent for a while, and then it was as if the stone melted and tears streamed down his face. We had the best talk we ever had. That one question prompted him to give serious consideration to his own willingness to talk, and accomplished what all her coaxing and angry tirades over a decade could not. Ding, ding, ding. Staying neutral. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Non-defensive questions can also be effective in cases where a person suspects he is being treated with prejudice. Floyd, a Native American who had recently graduated with a master's degree in social work, had gone to a school district office in a suit and tie to apply for a job in a local high school as a counselor to gangs. After giving him a bare glance, the woman at the counter announced, "We aren't taking applications for bus drivers right now." Floyd felt angry and humiliated that she would assume he was applying for a job that did not require a college degree. When he tersely told her the job he was applying for and took the application, she acted cool and unapologetic. Feeling that he would make things worse by showing anger, he walked away furious. To hold the woman more accountable for her own assumption, Floyd might have respectfully requested that she clarify her meaning. He might have asked, "Why do you assume I am here to apply for a job as a bus driver?" She now has the responsibility for clarification. She can either expose or struggle with a prejudice, or she can explain some other reason for her remark. By holding people accountable for what they say, we can keep our own dignity regardless of how they respond. So this is some really good stuff, right? And I think especially that last little piece where we're talking about the assumptions people make about us. We're too old for this. We're a woman, so we aren't going to get that. We've never done this before, so how are we ever going to do it now? Blah, 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 blah. All that stuff. And it lights us up like a Christmas tree, right? When someone says that, well, you're a woman, you're not going to get that. We need to be able to ask, so you believe that women aren't capable of X, whatever it is, in that neutral tone, and see what happens. In this case, with the bus, her making the misassumption that he was there for a bus driver job, perhaps the 3 men who came in prior to him were all there for a bus driver job. We don't know. We don't know what might have led to her making that statement. We'd like to assume it's not that she's prejudiced against someone who's Native, but we don't know. We don't know. But it puts her in the position of having to claim that prejudice if indeed that's what it is, right? Yes, she now has the responsibility for clarification. So again, I'd really like us all to be, this isn't what this is, but taking a little 3x5 card and jotting down these sentence stems that we can use when we end up in one of these circumstances. Are you saying X or are you saying Y? Is there a reason why you're thinking that's the case? And have the words present. What makes this cool is if you're talking to someone on the phone or via Zoom or whatever, well, even in person, you can have your little piece of paper handy. Wait a minute, I gotta look something up. Read it off the card. Who cares? Who cares? We're learning how to do this. So in order to learn how to do this, we need practice. We may need assistive devices, a 3x5 card with some sentence stems, whatever it's going to take. I would love to see this ripple through. I'm so excited. There's 7 of you on today. 7 of you making a difference in your assumptions and your conversations subsequent to those assumptions. 7 ripples out into the universe. 7 opportunities to then talk to someone about, I'm learning this new way to communicate, because someone might notice. So let's say it's your spouse, and for 40 years, whenever he or she has said X, you've responded Y. You've got the pattern. Okay, now you break the pattern. Are you saying this or are you saying that? They may make a comment about that. It was interesting. You didn't light up like a Christmas tree when I pushed that button. What's that about? Well, I'm learning this new thing. You want to hear about it? And then you can have a conversation about it. You don't necessarily want to try to talk someone into doing it. Because how do you all feel about that? When someone has the new, latest, and greatest whatever, and they try to get everybody to do it, right? Ah, wonderful. Okay. And what I'm going to say, Lisa, is you may believe you only have one chance. But take this chance as best you can. Be as sincere and honest as you can be. And then let go of the outcome. Let go of the outcome. Don't hang on to, I only have one chance, because that's going to tighten you up and make it harder for you to come across the way you want to. All right? Same thing, Judy. Put it out there as kindly, lovingly, gently, curiously, innocently, honestly as you can. Let go of the outcome. Wherever they go with it, they go with it. And don't necessarily assume that where they initially go with it is where they are going to stay with it. Good morning, Janine. Glad you're here. Sometimes, so let's say I'm going to make one up here. Let's say your friend borrows money from you all the time and you're tired of her borrowing money and not paying you back, okay? So you're going to make a comment in whatever, outgrowing the connection, got it. So you can kindly and lovingly release her. And her or him, whoever it is. And in doing so, it may feel bad to you to do it, but here's what you're doing. You're setting that other person free also. You're setting them free to have a happier connection with someone else. How loving is that? That is really loving. Instead of staying connected out of obligation, and it becomes not pleasant. We might find ourselves making snarky comments. We might find ourselves not answering the phone when that person calls. We're not showing up, right? So to kindly and lovingly set someone free really is a good thing to do. It really is. So we're all going to send you, yes, fourth person. Okay, so you're growing, you're up leveling. This happens. And sometimes we may not totally let that person go, but we may make significant adjustments to that relationship. Let's say someone has a drinking buddy and you're no longer drinking. You may occasionally get together with that person for something that doesn't involve drinking. Hey, let's go for a walk, whatever. That person may not be interested in that because you were their drinking buddy, okay? But you can still offer it if you're hoping to see, is there something still in this relationship beyond just that action of drinking together? Yes, human beings, we are interesting creatures, aren't we? So sending everybody good juju as you're practicing this stuff. It isn't easy, but it is powerful. It's incredibly powerful. And again, that ripple effect, as we do these things, as the 8 of us do these things with the people in our world, maybe some of them can then do these things with others. Maybe there will be the 1 or 2 that ask you, where did you learn to do that? Then you can talk about it, right? So I'm sending you all off with good juju to have these conversations, to practice, to be observing, to step into that curious place, to step into that inquiring place where you really want to know, but you're letting go of the outcome. However they respond is how they respond, and it does not matter because it's all good. All right? Have an awesome day. We'll see you again tomorrow. Remember, you're capable of far more than you think you are. Bye.